Good evening, everyone. I'm Sarah Stolfa. I'm the CEO and Artistic Director at Tilt Institute, formerly the Philadelphia Photo Art Center. I want to thank everyone for being here tonight. Just so you know, if you just joined in, we are recording so that it can be posted to our YouTube channel. Tonight's conversation is with the two exhibiting artists in Tilt's annual exhibition, which is a contemporary photography competition. This year we have two wonderful, funny enough, black and white photographers. It's not often that we have that happen at the same time, but our new documentary photography exhibition, this is our 10th year hosting the exhibition, and from a call for submissions, Alex Klein, curator at the Institute of Contemporary Art, was one of the jurors, as well as Chris Graves. And they selected Maggie and Jose as our two exhibiting artists for this year. The show is currently open at Tilt Institute. We are open from Wednesday through Saturday, 12 to 6. And I'm excited to say we didn't have an opening reception because of COVID numbers, but we are moving ahead with the artist reception on March 10th. Both Jose and Maggie will be with us here in Philadelphia at the gallery, so I hope you can join us for that reception. I want to thank everyone for being here, and I'm going to turn it over to Alex. I want to thank you, Alex, Maggie, and Shannon, and Jose for being here. I really appreciate not only all the effort you put into making a beautiful exhibition, but for taking the time tonight to talk about the work as well. So Alex, I'm going to turn it over to you. Thank you for being here.
Thanks so much, Sarah, and thank you to Lori for all of your help. It's just really exciting to just see all the new things you're up to at Tilt. So I'm just looking forward to everything you're cooking up right now. And I want to also acknowledge, as Sarah mentioned, my co-juror, Chris Graves, and just give a shout out to everyone who applied. It was a really tough decision. Big congratulations to Maggie and Jose, but also congratulations to the runner-ups. And, we both had a really long short list, I'll say. So, just to lend transparency to the decision, it ended up being about the overlaps in our top contender shortlists. But just to say there was a really diverse bodies of work, and it was really hard. So I applaud everyone. And so just to say, keep sending your work in. It's always good, to get what you're up to in front of other people's eyes. So I think these situations, these exhibitions are really wonderful, and a really democratic way of sharing work with curators and other artists. So it was really wonderful to learn so much about so many artists. So, but tonight is all about Jose and Maggie. I was so just really pleased to get to know both of your work. We've had a chance to chat a little bit in advance leading up to this. And I feel really fortunate that we get to host your exhibitions here in Philadelphia. Just to start off, I invited both Jose and Maggie to share a little bit about their projects that are up at Tilt right now. And just as a prelude, I'm going to read out their biography so you have some context. And then I'm going to invite Maggie maybe to pull up her screen and dive right in to the projects. So Jose works with photography, video, found material, and language, moving between the conceptual and documentary realms. Through research, he takes history as a point of departure to inquire into and express anthropological and sociological concerns. He identifies with cultural changes and the impact they have on different places, the cultural modification of people and society, as well as the physical transformation of landscapes brought about by commercialism, colonialism, geopolitical conflict, and interventions. He has participated in many group exhibitions such as Pacific Standard Time, LA, their 38th Biennale of Ireland, the Mercursor Biennial, and the Central American Biennial. And his work has been shown in institutions such as Tate Modern and the Museum of Modern Art of Medellin, and many others, including Museo del Barrio in New York. Maggie Shannon is a photographer specializing in portrait and documentary work. Maggie tells stories of small communities and their social rituals in order to elevate marginalized voices and build a more inclusive world. Her approach is rooted in honesty, empathy, and endless curiosity. Hailing from Martha's Vineyard, she received her MFA from the School of Visual Arts and Photography, Video, and Related Media, and is now based in LA. Maggie was selected as a 2018 PDN Emerging Photographer and was named one of Magnum's 30 under 30. She's a member of Women Photograph, and her work has appeared in American Photography 35, 36, and 37. And her first book, Swamp Yankee, told the story of New England shark fishing. And some of you may have seen her work in the New York Times. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Maggie to take us into her project.
Hey, hello, everybody. Sharing my screen here. And so yeah, thank you so much, Tilt, for having us today. And thank you, Alex, for moderating this talk. It's such a joy to be sharing this story with you. And I just saw in the audience, we have one of the all-stars here, one of the midwives, Patrice Bobbier. Sorry for calling you out, Patrice, but I'm so happy that you're here. So yeah, get started. My latest ongoing project has me following midwives as they navigate the pandemic. So that's the story I'm going to be sharing with you today. Right before Los Angeles first went into lockdown in early March of 2020, I was having a conversation with a good friend of mine, Paige Summer, who's a practicing doula. She mentioned the potential rise in home births due to the pandemic, with partners being banned from the delivery room and hospitals flooding with sick patients. I've always been interested in midwifery, and this piqued my curiosity. So I started reaching out to midwives across the United States to see if this was true, and the answer was a resounding yes. The midwives are overwhelmed with calls from terrified people hoping to switch to a home birth. The possibility of going through childbirth without a mask and in a familiar setting seemed to these women like the only option. A few of the midwives I reached out to in Los Angeles allowed me to shadow them as they did home visits, so I was able to document how their practices shifted to protect their patients, themselves, and their own families. One of the first midwives I worked with was Perez. You can see her in this slide as she's checking on the progress of a birth at a center in Arcadia, California. Shemin had moved her entire birth clinic out into tents into the parking lot, reserving the interior space just for labor. Shemin is one of the few midwives in Los Angeles that takes Medi-Cal, the California Medical Assistance Program. So the move seemed like an obvious choice and allowed her to continue to provide care for one of the most vulnerable populations. Amid a COVID surge in late 2021, I began documenting midwives in Western Michigan, Patrice Bobbier, and her dear friend Jen Holshoe as well. Many of their patients tested positive, refused to get vaccinated, or were masked during their appointments. The women provide medical care while fighting a constant barrage of misinformation theories and a new lack of trust in their profession. They often have to set aside their own political views in order to care for their community. I found their work extraordinary, especially working under the shadow of the Supreme Court case that has the potential to overturn Roe versus Wade. The midwives are adamant about their work to empower women to make their own decisions and choose what their own body experiences, whether that means terminating unwanted pregnancy, giving birth at home, or in a hospital. The midwives I met while working in Michigan are understaffed and suffering burnout after 2 years of working under extreme stress. They're regularly seeing COVID complications in pregnant women while also working without a support network since there are so few of them in this area. They've also seen a rise in certain conditions in mothers that have tested positive for COVID, but the midwives don't have access to collected data since this is still such a new virus. One of the midwives had a stillbirth recently with an unvaccinated mother who contracted COVID, and she believed the loss was related. The midwives are doing what they can to work together to collectively pool their resources, but it's exhausting to care for so many while battling a constantly changing this.
Maggie,
Yes. Yeah.
are you using a connected microphone or it's a little garbled? You're speaking right into the computer?
I am, yeah.
Okay, okay. Maybe just slow down talking a little bit because it feels like it's a little garbled.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. Thank you for letting me know. I learned so much about birth and what our bodies are capable of while working on this story. Birth is so unpredictable, and the midwives showed such strength and perseverance, sometimes handling back-to-back births while lasting hours and hours, an exhausting job for them and the mothers. I was also struck by the courage of the women in labor. It was incredibly difficult not to put down my camera and comfort someone in pain. Though I'm not a mother myself, it was incredibly important for me to present these individual labor stories in a real and unflinching way. Everything is made more difficult by the pandemic, birth included. And this pandemic has disproportionately affected women, so I hope my project illuminates some of the burdens we bear. I wanted to celebrate these women and show the realities of childbirth while also making the story as collaborative as possible. To accomplish this, I tried to talk with each mother before documenting their birth, asking them questions about their comfort level, if there was anything they didn't want photographed. I also shared the galleries with them to make sure they felt safe with how they were portrayed, and also as a way to include them in the process. At a time marked by separation and death, these stories of connection, care, and birth are especially healing. Childbearing in the works of midwives is not well documented. The realities of childbirth are still taboo. When a difficult process is made even harder by a global pandemic and restrictive laws, continuous restrictive laws, the need to be honest about childbirth in our own bodies becomes even more important. The story shows what life is like for these midwives right now. The exhaustion, the late nights, teamwork, the joy of a successful birth, all while navigating an ongoing and shifting pandemic that is directly affecting their communities.
Thank you, Maggie. And now I think we'll pass it over to Jose, and then we'll talk some more. And I think to Sarah's point that you both work in black and white, I think after your presentation it will become evident how different your projects are, even though there might be a kind of a surface similarity there. So take it away.
Am I ready? Okay. I didn't have any slideshow or anything. Hi, everybody. Thank you for being here. It's a pleasure. My name is José Castrellón, and I'm going to share my screen. And wait. I'm not good at this at all, so bear with me. So I can go by one by one. Okay, you seeing this?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes.
Okay,
Awesome.
so I think I have to go one by one. Okay, so I did Apocalipsis in Solentiname in 2019 of a Swiss grant that I got through this colleague, Marco Jaudelo from Nicaragua, and in the Solentiname Islands in Lake Nicaragua. So back in the 60s, this man, rest in peace, he died like 2 years ago. Ernesto Cardenal, that was a revolutionary poet and first Sandinista before he got mad with Daniel Ortega that was doing crazy, hideous, dumb stuff, of being an autocrat. So he created this community of art through peasants and teaching them how to paint and do sculpture back in the 60s. And he built up a church there too, because he was a priest. And this is how everything happened in Solentiname. And I was the last person to photograph him after my residence in Solentiname Islands, and he created this community, and that community is still there, and people are praying, and they live off the land and from fishing and living from the woods, you know, and from the lake. And they basically commissioned me to go photograph every day, 10 days, whatever I see. I went back into black and white. I had 17 years without photographing in black and white. So part of my proposal was like, Panamanian photographer from the 60s, Sandra Leta, had been in that community with Juan Downey and Allen Ginsberg and Julio Cortázar and all these intellectuals of the 60s and artists. And she was part of the community, and she used to photograph in black and white. So that's why I considered going back and doing this project in black and white. And also to Marco Agudelo parents, they were part of this community in the 60s. So I just went and photographed, and my way of my narrative for this project was just to knowing the people and being there every day and photographing, kind of like slow documentary, the community of Solentiname Islands, of all the archipelago. And especially I concentrated myself like photographing in Isla Santa Rosa, that it was like one tiny island that everybody is I photographed there the most. And I kind of like I slept there several nights and having dinner with them and chit-chatting with them and getting to know them, you know. And this is what I did. So this is basically Apocalipsis Solentiname, that it's an investigation, not an investigation, it's just like a journal of my travels to the archipelago. How did Julio Cortázar did back in 1963 when he got smuggled in by Ernesto Cardenal to read poetry and share his work in the community in 63. And he did a little bit of a journal named Apocalipsis de Solentiname, and he photographed a couple of Polaroids. So I kind of like got inspired in this poetic and free way of photographing the everyday and people that I was meeting in the islands for 10 days.
Jose, would you like me to share some images for you?
Yes, please, because I messed up here. Sorry.
No, it's fine. Let me share my screen and then you keep talking.
Yeah, I'm a dummy for this. Sometimes like digital stuff. I thought you guys were seeing all this stuff. Sorry. So, and you're able to press on that? Hello?
All right, I'm going to turn off my screen. It didn't move forward. You couldn't see it.
I was seeing it, but the thumbnails only.
No, it's just the thumbnails, Lori. It wasn't going through the slideshow.
Got it.
No.
How about now?
Now. And then they live off the land, you know, like they eat armadillos and fish, and they live literally out of the land, you know. And then it's a fisherman's community. And then there were a couple like all the artists that I tried to photograph there, but that they were friends with Ernesto, like they were basically like all dead because from back in the day. So I photographed like kind of like the new generation of people living off the land. Well, they're not artists anymore because this was like eons ago, and I just photographed freely and democratic what I was seeing every day since me being on the archipelago for 10 days. And that's basically what it is, Apocalipsis in Solentiname.
Thank you for that, Jose and Maggie. I really appreciate you taking a minute to walk us through your images and just giving us a short introduction to your respective projects. I'd love to start maybe with something you kind of both brought up, which is maybe your relationship to the documentary, which is, maybe a riff on the title for tonight. You both had very different processes. You both shoot with different kinds of cameras, analog versus digital, which affects maybe the process of the way that you work. But I'm actually really more interested in your relationship to your subjects. And I wonder if you could maybe reflect a little bit on that idea of the document, and bring us a little bit into your process of the work with your subjects. And then maybe I can ask Maggie to start, even because you're in very personal situations. I'm imagining a lot of unscripted moments. I'm imagining also a lot of, intimacy that you have to build up and trust. How do you work with those subjects? How do you edit, or is anything staged? What bring us into the world? Because birth is something that is full of twists and turns, and I'm sure a lot of unplanned situations.
Yeah, definitely. I was actually talking to my husband about this last night. So I was like, what is my process? What is process? I'm freaking out. I don't know how to respond to this question because it's so good. And he was like, well, think about how, all the work that goes into like even just one image. And I thought that was such a great way to consider it, because each, connection that I make, there's emails, phone calls, like even, I mailed prints to someone and waited and then called them, to have them go through and make sure that they felt safe with the images that I was using. And then coffee meetups, all of the things, even like I think in 2020, I stood in someone's driveway and waved to them so they could see me before, I showed up at their birth. So a lot of work goes into this, and also researching too, just so I don't sound like a total doofus showing up on the day of. Like, I want to have a little bit of information. And I'm lucky that both of my parents work in the medical profession, so they've been such a good resource for this too. But yeah, I think it takes a lot of time to build up that trust with people, and I feel really grateful that so many have allowed me into these moments, because it is like, there is nothing more special than being there when like a little tiny baby opens his eyes for the first time. That's like sacred ground. So
yeah, and I think that's kind of part of what I'm hoping both of you can talk about a little bit, is all the things that happen to make that image, because it's not like you just popped in and boop, there it happened. Even if it's a spontaneous in the moment thing that you're capturing, there's a lot of trust, relationship, bureaucracy. At one point, I think I even asked you if there were any legal considerations about being in the room, because I'm assuming some of these they're happening outside of the kind of mainstream medical system. So, what are there liabilities, and also what agency do your subjects have in the final images? Were all kind of questions that came to mind for me.
Yeah, definitely. I give them control over the images for sure. I mentioned this in my little intro, but yeah, if there's any image that they don't want shown, then it's gone, it's deleted. And to be honest, I've only had that happen with one person. So, and it is painful, but I'd much rather have them be proud and feel like gain strength from the work, if that makes sense. Like, I want them to feel powerful. And if they're not feeling that, then this isn't accomplishing what I wanted to accomplish. But yeah.
But I remember both of you, when we had our kind of warm-up conversation, you both kind of were like, we're not photojournalists, this is not about truth with a capital T, and this is, there's an element of storytelling in both of your projects. And Jose, I would love for you to maybe talk a little bit about the process of how you gained entree into your subjects, because it also, the backstory is a little more complicated than maybe the kind of the simple beauty in a way of your images. That there's a lot of orchestration on your end to get access to people and to find yourself in these kinds of unscripted situations.
Yeah, my process for Apocalipsis and Solentiname was wild, because supposedly this grant I had to do it in 2018, and then crazy uprisings in 2018 went crazy in Nicaragua, and they were killing people, and because there was a huge turmoil, like because they wanted like to almost they were close to give a coup to Daniel Ortega. So I was not able to go to in 2018. So I made it in 2019. Like I was talking to Marcos, like director of this project, and that he wanted to like almost like do it like they did back in the 60s with Julio Cortázar, like kind of like fly to Costa Rica and cross the border and stuff. And I went like, no man, like that sounds way too crazy. I don't want to get shanked. I don't want to get killed, I don't want to get kidnapped or something like that, but we made it out. Me and my assistant, we flew, and they drove us out there to the lake, and Marcos introduced us to everybody. Well, before that, landing in Nicaragua, in Managua, we got checked in the airport for all the equipment, and basically almost like we almost got a cavity search. It was like really intense. But the whole process, that was like getting there, but the whole process of my approach to the people, I got there, it was pretty laid back. Basically, like Marcos went with me because he's an architect and he works with the community and with biodegradable materials, with bamboo, and then it's part of a project that he has on a side, as being an artist too as well. So he knows everybody there. So he basically slept one night with us there, and basically we went on a boat. We had a driver in a boat, and he introduced us basically to, like, I don't think in that island they live like more than 500 people. Like he knows like everybody. So he introduces to everybody. Like Jose is doing this body of work here, and he wants to know. So it was in that part, it was kind of like easy, like going there from first glance, because it was part of a commission, like with Latin American artists that he was doing this. He also did it with I was the only lens base, and that there were the sculptures went, installation people went, Felipe Mujica went, Enengel Leonardo went too, and Benvenuto Shabahai also too went, and different mediums, So it was basically what I was doing. I was like, that is kind of like part of is a big process of my process. It's to hang out with everybody, like I hang out like I'm not catching moments because I have a big camera, so I listen, I sit to everybody's stories, like I go to a bar and have like beers with people, and like I have lunch with people, like, or like I go fishing with people and stuff. And then the first 2 days I didn't even pull out my camera, and I was just hanging out. And that's part of my process in all my work, really personal work, and my artistic practice is just getting to know people, and then because I don't want to feel it like force, like come like shove a camera to somebody's face, and then that was part of the whole process. And then they knew me that there was this Panamanian guy, like that was friends with Ernesto, and like then part of the other process too, it was an honor to me there, because being a Latin American artist, like I have been reading all my life, Ruben Darío, that I was from Nicaragua too, and his poetry that I was before that, and also to Ernesto Cardenal's poetry, and all these people, and these literary characters from Central America and Latin America. So it was Julio Cortázar is huge too, also too, not from Central America, but from Argentina, but in the dictatorship of Argentina, he was living in Paris. But all these people were there. So it was a huge honor to be, as an artist, be there and shoot what I was seeing, and I got inspired by that text, by that essay of Julio Cortázar. So I kind of like did a little bit of a plot twist there. He shot Polaroids in color, and I went inspired also too by Sandra Leta to back into black and white, you know. So it was kind of like a challenge too, you know. So that was the process of all Apocalipsis and Solentiname. You know, it was something new for me, you know, like a challenge too. So that's what it came out, and I was basically every day I will go to an island or several islands, and I will hang out with people, and then like there I will go like, hey, I want to photograph you, I want to photograph this and that, you know, like, and it worked organically.
Yeah, and it sounds like that's what allowed you to capture these really, subtle moments. You were saying you were hanging out with someone that they were already up the ladder, picking something from a tree. So you were like, just stop there and let me document this. So I think maybe something that maybe speaks to both of your projects is this investment in relationships, and has allowed both of your projects to take place, right? The kind of trust you're building. You're socializing with your subjects. But Jose, I also remember you saying that you were told there were certain people you couldn't photograph. Like it was also, there was.
That was like, I don't believe that. That was Marcos. No. Well, there was a huge turmoil, and a lot of media in Managua got killed by paramilitary people, you know, like. Right. Not against establishment, you know. That's why they were like so uptight about cameras, you know. And that's how like Marcos picture this, you know, like, don't pull your phone out here. And you know, like, I'm from Latin America, I have been like in worse places, you know, and I was in the middle of this lake island with parrots and monkeys and stuff, and I went like, I felt the vibe first. Like after a couple of days, like, I'm not gonna get shanked here, you know, like,
right,
or hustled, you know, like. So I left myself loose, and I just got into the groove, you know.
But you're both kind of given entree right into these like communities.
Actually, he was picturing it because actually there are a couple of people there in that island, you know, that they're super extreme left wing, you know, that they're still Sandinistas, you know, like the owner, not the owner, because, well, you know, communist regime, nobody's owner of anything, but like the lodge where they were lodging us, that it was Benicio. He was in the front line back in the day with Iran Contra. You know, when Reagan and the U.S. sent a bunch of like, you know, like, and Oliver North and all these people like send guns like from Iran, you know, and then he was in the front line, and he's a huge commie now, and he's still with Daniel Ortega's ideology, you know. Then when he told me that he was in the front line, you know, when we were getting introduced, he told me like, you can photograph anybody, but don't photograph that guy.
Okay, right. Well, I think what you're kind of pointing to is the, you know, the socio-political context in both of your projects. So, you know, I mean, that you could, you know, have your camera confiscated at the airport, that could get you, you know, kicked out of the country or sent to jail or maybe worse. And then, you know, Maggie, I think, you know, you're photographing in this landscape that we're in now in the pandemic, and sure, a lot of people have rushed to use, you know, midwives, you know, and chosen to give birth outside of the hospital system because of the pandemic. But what it also reveals, as you mentioned in your talk, is the real lack of infrastructure for maternal health, right, in this country. So it's a problem that supersedes the pandemic. So I just think it's interesting how both of your projects are speaking to maybe very different socio-political contexts, but they're really shaped by them, and they're really how you're able to work as a photographer, you know, is it really informed by those contexts, and also what you're kind of bringing to light. I don't know if you have more thoughts on that, Maggie, that you wanted to share. You don't have to if you.
Yeah. I mean, I think that was one thing that, you know, scratched the surface. I mean, working on any story, my curiosity kind of like starts that ball rolling down the hill, and then I read and have conversations, and then I don't know, I feel like a lot of this project was just like anger building. So I would read and have a conversation with a midwife and feel anger about how they were treated or some of their clients were treated. And it's actually kind of interesting because the majority of the midwives that I met became midwives or doulas because of how they were treated for one of their births. And yeah, I think that says something where like, I would be interested to see the statistics of it, but if the majority of a profession comes as a result from a traumatizing experience, what does that say about like birth in America right now? But yeah, there's so many layers to this, and I feel like I'm just starting to scratch the surface of it after working on it for 2 years. And yeah, it's definitely been quite a wild ride.
And is it a project that keeps on going for you?
Yeah, definitely. I think like what started as a story focused on LA about the rise in home births has now turned into a story about what midwifery looks like in America. So I'd love to go back to Michigan, and then I'd also love to travel to different states. Alabama, I think, just legalized midwifery. So I'm curious to what that looks like, you know, and other states as well. I think like, you know, it's so all across the board, like every state has different restrictions for it. Or there's more focus on nurse midwives, which work more in like with doctors and hospitals. So there's so many different like types of midwifery, and yeah, each state kind of has their own rules, and sometimes it's very hard for these women to work. I've met a midwife in LA that like fled from somewhere to work specifically in California just because the laws here are so much more open.
Yeah, I guess that's why one of the reasons I was wondering about maybe your own liability as a witness or photographer. So it's interesting to think about what your role is in all of this. I want to make sure that we also talk about both of your decisions to use black and white, because it is a decision in this day and age. And I know that it was something that was maybe in some ways unique for both of you, but something that's been remarked upon because it just so happened that you both had black and white projects, which was not I think we were all surprised by that in some ways. But they're really, I can't imagine either of your projects not being in black and white. And there's something that maybe in Jose's case, there's a way it kind of takes it out of time. I mean, the fact that you were looking back to a moment in the 60s and to, previous cultural producers and also previous political movements, that there's a way that it also maybe takes it a bit out of time. And, for you, Maggie, the black and white does something similar. It takes you out of that, I don't know, that specificity in a way. Like it becomes less about like seeing a birth and like feeling the emotions or something. It conjures another kind of maybe narrative. So I would love it if you could both maybe reflect on that choice, and also, if it's something that I know it's not something that you do often in your work, and maybe how you came to that decision and how it fits into your larger projects.
I can go. Jose, you're welcome to talk as well. But yeah, I guess like for me, one of the huge inspirations for the Midwife Project was Country Doctor by Eugene Smith. And I really wanted to kind of update that with a bit of like a feminist twist, if you will. So, not just the white male doctor providing care, but what does it look like when it's replaced with a woman? And I was also super inspired by FSA imagery. That's always been, I took like this stellar class in college that was all focused on FSA photography. And I feel like if I could point to one thing in my career that like really influenced it, it was that class. And maybe I see my friend Fraley in the chat. Maybe if she could remind me who that professor was that taught that class. I think it was Michael Lessie. But yeah, so definitely those were all major influences on the work. And also the color was just super distracting. Like in some of the houses, there was like a bright teal wall, or someone was wearing like a rainbow dress, and the image became more about that color pattern, and it distracted from like a very intimate moment happening. So when you drained all the color away, I felt like the emotion really started to like just pound out. So yeah.
Well, my decision, like black and white, well, Maggie just said something that makes me kind of like something funny. I come from my studies. Like I went to a school like in Maine. Like everything was in black and white. When I got there, everything was in black and white. Like that was 12 years ago. And then I was like, damn, like all black and white, you know? So I was like 2 years doing an associate degree. And then like almost to the end of the year, we got into color and that kind of stuff. So I was really good printing, you know, but at the end of the day, I got fed up, you know, like I want to get into color, you know, I'm more like oriented like to not toning and that kind of stuff and printing and fine art paper, you know, like, you know, Ilford and Oriental, all that stuff. So I laid off for black and white, started doing a little bit of contemporary art with my photos, you know, through my narrative. And then I stumbled upon into Marco Agudelo inviting me to this, that with this fund that he got from Switzerland. And then he writes me, inviting me and saying like, on the phone, like, and through emails, and I went like, are you gonna photograph black and white? And I was like, damn. I was like, really? And then I was like, that's a challenge. I haven't photographed a roll of black and white like in 17 years or so. So also too, like I knew about Solentiname, everything is super duper green, you know? So it was gonna be a little bit kind of like distracting, you know? So it's more focused in you know, the imagery, you know, and the objects and the subjects, you know. So it was a challenge too, and I was kind of almost too like kind of like probably like I was like that new also too. He came upon like also too me being the like well the male version of um new generation of Panamanian photographer, that Sandra had been there and she photographed the community in black and white and stuff, you know. So he basically like proposed, you know, like going to black and white. So I just went like, you know what, I'm gonna give it a shot. I'm gonna shoot like, I'm gonna buy a couple of like Tri-X 400 Kodak and let's do it to see what's up. And this is what it came out, you know. And then it was a single project that I went there 10 days, and then what I was doing in 10 days, that's it, you know, se finito. And that's how it happened, you know, the decision. And I think it was really fun and interesting though. I even had to like go back into my notes and stuff, and then like because I was like pushing and pulling and using an orange filter, you know. So I kind of like had to when so school learned like school did worked, you know, like doing all this black and white stuff in Maine, you know, in Rockford College in the Maine photographic workshops.
Your skill sets kind of kicked in.
You know? So
Yeah.
well,
Well,
it
it
was
was
great.
beautiful results. I mean, I can't
Thank you.
imagine the project not being in black and white. I mean, the rich tonalities, but again, kind of to what I was saying earlier, there's a way in which it takes it out of time. So there is a kind of, even though I know you were photographing real situations you encountered, but there is a bit of a, I mean, it has a almost like a magical realism feel to it as you're looking at them.
That's what a lot of people say, and then yeah, it's true. It's true. Like that's a good freaking point, Alex. It made me really weird. I love what you just said. Just you just made my mind blow up a little bit. Because when I was showing it, like you know, like I was editing and all this stuff, and a lot of friends is like they were like, yo, like hay realismo mágico, you know, well, magic realism comes way back, like it starts in Germany and then with Frida Kahlo, you know, and then it trickles down with Gabriel Garcia Marquez, you know, and you know, in Aracataca in Colombia, you know, and then I'm huge about literature, you know, through my work, and I went like, this place is more or less like Macondo, you know, and then I was a little bit scared that it looked way, because there's a wave too of Latin American photography that is straight up black and white, you know, like and then Graciela Iturbide, you know, and Sandra Eleta, and well, way back from that, that he was also to a poet and a writer, Juan Rulfo, and Paolo Gasparini from Venezuela, you know, and all that movement through photography, they had magic realism, you know. So I was inspired by Sandra, you know, by La Bruja.
Right. So you're looking at the references of the people who are inspired by it. Yeah. Makes sense.
So yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, that's great. No, it's a wonderful unscripted exchange we just had, thinking in the moment together. But it really,
it's way lot different how I work.
Yeah,
so
right.
That was like, it was wild for me. You know, like I like challenges. You know, I like new stuff. I saw it too in my perception, my point of view, like doing this. Yeah, it was really free, everything. You know, like really poetic too. You know, inspired too. And magic, realismo mágico también, como, but you know what, like, I'm gonna accept this challenge, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna get out of my comfort zone, you know, and that's what it came out.
And I think it's paid off for both of you. I think it's really evident in both of your projects how much you've immersed yourself in the worlds that you know you've built through this exhibition. And actually, I'm looking at the time, and I want to make sure we have time for questions from the audience. But I would really love to hear from both of you about maybe the process of putting together an exhibition. If you ever imagined these works in the form of an exhibition, because photography obviously can take so many forms. I mean, it could be an editorial essay, book form. You know, it isn't always a given that it's supposed to be in space and to scale. So I wondered if you could both just speak a little bit about the decision and the process of making the show. And I believe that Lori actually might have some images for us to look at. So even, you know, questions of scale and editing. Yeah, I don't know, Jose, if you want to go first.
Okay. Yes, if it was, I got this invitation, like, you know, because part of the idea was like seeing with my vision to do this in Solentiname, but I was not planning a show. I was not planning to, it was just a record, you know, like an archive, you know, creating an archive. And then Marco writes me like a year after this stuff. You know, I'm gonna use it as my portfolio. It's wild and everything. But then he shoots me an email and calls me like, I'm gonna do a show in the Alliance Francaise in Managua with your work. And I went like, word, let's do it. So let's edit this stuff. So it was produced way a lot different than Tilt, you know, crazier place, you know, more makeshift, you know, Latin American style and more DIY, you know, and they were just like banners, you know, it was not my style either, and it came out amazing. And then like I posted too when I finished doing this work on the gram, and then like a person from Dominican Republic like hollered at me and told me like to do an interview of the work and in a blog, and I did it. And then I saw this application of an exhibition, you know, like, should I show this? You know, like, this is realismo mágico. I love that word. It's crazy, this word, you know, like, magic realism, you know, like, I'm gonna apply to Tilt with this stuff, you know. And then like I did a couple of selects. My friend Juan Brenner like helped me out. Like he always co-edits with me, you know, my work, and I sent this, and then the pandemic hit, and then Lori writes me like, do you want your money back, or do you want to leave the application there? And then I went like, I don't know, like just leave it there. I don't know. There's too much uncertainty. And then last fall, after 2 years, exactly, almost 2 years, like I received an email from Lori Wasselchuk, like writing me congratulations, like let's do a show. So I was like, wow, let's do a show. I had never had. It's my first solo show in the U.S. and it's an honor showing in Tilt, and also too by the side to Maggie Shannon that has incredible work, and it's happening. So I'm happy, and I'm happy to be here with all you guys, and we made it happen. So it's great.
Thank you so much. Maggie, do you want to share some insight onto how you were thinking about bringing your photographs into a space, into the context of an exhibition?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, first things first, like this never would have been possible without Jose and Lori and Keith at Tilt. They really made this show and this edit of images, without their help. Like, I don't know. It turned out so beautifully, and I can't wait to see it in person. Yeah, I feel like for me, I travel in so many different little worlds. Like some days I'm a documentary photographer, some days I'm a commercial photographer, some days, I'm at an art opening, so I'm an art photographer. And I think like I have so many different friends that work in those worlds as well. And so like the process of working on this series for the past 2 years, I've been getting such incredible feedback, but from so many different perspectives. And I remember like showing this work to a dear friend who's a photo editor at National Geographic, and she came at it from such a different perspective than I was thinking. And then like, the edit of some of the work that was in the New York Times, like that is so different from what's showing in Tilt right now. But I think that's amazing. Everyone brings their own perspectives to this stuff. And I think for the Tilt show, it felt really cool to be like, well, I can show the weird stuff. I can show like the ones that I'm really excited about, like the one of like a foot, pressing against a midwife's shoulder, showing like, the physical effort it takes to help a woman through a labor. And I don't know, I just think it was so fun to tell how you can tell a story in so many different ways. And I feel really grateful for this opportunity because this definitely feels like it came out of my heart. So I hope that people that see this show can understand that too.
I think it's really evident in both of your projects. So again, congratulations to you both. And they're both really powerful bodies of work. And I just hope everyone has a chance to spend time with them in person. So again, I think it's March 10th is the artist reception, and I hope everyone will come and congratulate you in person. So sorry, is someone, okay. So maybe before we open it up to the general audience, I wanted to see if either of you have any questions for each other. And if not, we can see if anyone else in the audience wants to maybe start collecting their thoughts. But now the two of you have, by the chance of this show, have come into dialogue, gotten to know each other, and hopefully we'll start your own kind of relationship. But I was wondering if you have any burning questions or things that have been left unsaid.
We kind of me and Maggie, like, I don't know, virtually we have become friends, like I think communication in life in general, it's key, and then like I have been in communication a lot with Maggie Shannon, and it has been beautiful, the whole communication. I really appreciate that, Maggie. And well, I have not a couple of questions, but a quick question to Maggie. We kind of like practiced this before over text. So how, well, like really quickly, I have like really short questions, like how it was conceived, like to do this body of work. Is it your first project too? Like what I've heard in conversations too, you want to go through it, working it more. What are you looking forward to? Like making a book? I think making a book of this will be really cool and interesting, but not like an actual book, you know, but like kind of like a small publication will be amazing, you know.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's definitely like my end goal, is to have it as a book, maybe even a series of books, but we'll see. You know, I have like 2 states down, and I feel like it could be a lifelong project. But yeah, I guess that's part of the fun. I feel like so many projects that I've worked on before this, like the shark fishing, or I did a story on pie eating contest, you know, they've all been very like, short little things, and this just feels like this huge expansive project. So it's nice to, you know, always have
It's
something
good
to
for
work
that
on.
for a long-term project. Yeah.
Mhm.
You want to shoot a question to me?
Yeah, you know, so when you first had the idea of going to this place, and now like looking back on it, was there anything that really kind of surprised you, or like shifted from that first starting point to where you are right now with the show all open and everything?
Was that like, I felt it was an invitation, you know, artistic residence, whatever you want to call it, like contemporary art. I don't know what to call it, because, you know, like it's, you also too coin saying in this conversation too, also too, like saying like sometimes you do fine art work and sometimes you're a commercial photographer. I think we are in the same boat too as well, you know. And then so this was probably art, you know, but then the way how I saw it, to be honest, I felt that it was a commission, you know. I felt like it was a commission, you know, and then I read a lot of I read that essay, like I have it in my notes still in my iPhone, like more than 100 times, you know, like even being and sleeping in Solentiname, like I will read it every night, you know, the essay of Julio Cortázar. So I didn't have like actually like a lifeline of like following it, you know, like I felt like I didn't want to like kind of like to complicate myself to follow a line, you know. So I was just like, you know, like free versing, you know, and then whatever I was like stumbling into, you know, like there were some bigger islands, there were smaller islands, and then I will go there with my assistant, and then I will just walk. I will walk and walk every day, take the boat. Hey, I'm gonna go to this island. Like, let's walk into this island. You know, like whatever. Well, for example, like that 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 photo of the armadillo, like attached to a rope, that came super random. Like we were like docking into this island, one of the bigger ones, but the back of the island, and then all of a sudden there was kind of like cattle corral, because they have to bring from mainland, 'cause there's basically no meat there, you know, because it's out there, you know. And then all of a sudden we're docking in, and then a dog starts like squealing but crazy, and then I go like, me and my sister like, what the hell happened? Like, then well, the islands too were full of tarantulas too, everywhere, you know. They were infested, you know. I got bitten by a snake, or also too by a scorpion or whatever. And the thing is, like, the dog was like barking because he was chasing that armadillo. So when we get off the boat, underneath these beautiful pitayas too, like the dog has in his muzzle, like in his mouth, like an armadillo. And then the guy who was running the corral, he just grabbed it, and he was semi alive, and he just tied it up, like. And then I went like, "What are you doing with that?" Like, I'm gonna eat it. I live out of that. And we're like, "Whoa, really? That's wild." So it was there, you know. So it was just me visiting places, and then what was happening, you know, not action, but after action, or like people, you know. It was really free, and I think it came out great, you know.
I mean, I think the photographs stand on their own, but having the backstory and you painting the big picture for us. I mean, it's enjoyable. I feel like I could listen to your stories behind each photograph for a very long time. So maybe there's another project in that in and of itself. I'm just seeing that a question has come in the chat for Maggie from Lori. Lori, do you want to just say it yourself, or would you like me to read it?
So, I love this project, Maggie, so much. And as a mom, I just felt like they were striking me quite deeply as I looked at each one, and it felt very close to them. But the sacredness of that space is so it really resonated. And I'm just wondering if your images are part of their lives. Have you heard? I mean, sometimes we don't know, right, when you share images, but have you heard if they have become part of their birthing kind of story?
Yeah, I think it's always fun to hear, like, especially after a year when you check in with people and see how they're doing and see how they're still excited about some of the photos. Like I was checking in with one woman, just I think like a licensing request came in. I'm like, I usually don't like license this stuff at all. But I had talked with a midwife and we were like, dude, we can like donate this money to a cause for like women's health care. It will be great. And I was like, okay, let's try it. But I was checking in with everybody to see, just what their comfort level was, if they were down. And one of the mothers, Taylor, was like, this is still my favorite image, of my husband. And it's the one, it's in the show where he's like looking up from the birthing pool and he just has this look of like such fear in his face. And I'm like, just so touched that they have that like printed out, I think, and like in their house. And that's just so special. And then another woman's mother messaged me on Instagram just saying how much she loved the images. And it feels so special to be, it's almost like being a wedding photographer where you're there for like the most important moment of like these people's lives. It's the same thing with a birth, I think. Like it's so special and you really get close to people very quickly being there. Like I got invited to a naming ceremony that I sadly couldn't attend, but the gesture of being invited was like almost made me cry. It was so touching. So yeah, very special stuff.
I'm seeing that Jose had to step away for a second. I was curious to know if what he actually did with his photographs in the end with his subjects. But Maggie, you have another question that's just come through from Stephen Rubin. Stephen, would you like to hop on and ask the question, or?
Sure. Yeah. Hi, everybody. Yeah, Maggie, I was just really interested. I believe you mentioned that you were influenced by Eugene Smith's work on the Country Doctor or the Life magazine essay, and I was just wondering also about his essay, which I think was a few years later, like early maybe 1951, a long time ago, but about the nurse midwife in South Carolina, whether that shaped your work as well.
Right. I feel like a very bad photographer. I did not know about this at all. And I'm so glad that you told me about it, because now I need to track it down and devour it. So yeah, it was in South Carolina, you said? Okay, I'm writing this down. That's amazing.
Yeah, really extraordinary essay about this woman who was a nurse midwife, but also really was basically largely the medical help in just a very large region. And for Life magazine to publish a project of this kind of in-depth photo essay, and I think it was 1951, on an African-American woman was pretty extraordinary. It really produced a lot of outpouring of interest and concern, and even a lot of donations for her situation, and helped to build like a local clinic there, if I'm not mistaken on that. So yeah, definitely check that out.
Thank you so much for sharing that with me. It sounds like a great story. I can't wait.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think like a lot of these people, a lot of the midwives are sometimes the only access to care in a lot of the rural areas. So, and that's definitely, it happened in the 1950s. It's still happening today. And that's definitely been one of like I want to travel to those places and meet these people that are doing that, because I think that that's so incredible.
Yeah. Jose, while you had stepped away for a second, and I'll just give people a chance to maybe ask another question and we can see where we are. But I was curious, maybe coda to the what Maggie was talking about. Did you ever show your images to your subjects? Did anybody ever get to see the final edit? Because in Maggie's case, there was a very involved process of editing and feedback with the final images, and so I'm
not
curious.
not in person.
Yeah.
I wish it was in person. I could. It's such a long trip going out there to Solentiname, but
No, but
what
did you
I
email people and?
no. Well, they don't have computers out there. It's
Oh.
really wild out there. You know, really rural. But what I did is to Marcos, I printed everybody's photos that made the cut or outside the cut. Everybody that I photographed, I printed it, and then Marco told me, like, send the photos to a Nicaraguan friend to Baltimore, the actual prints, and then that she was going to an address, a person that I don't know, but knows Marcos, and then she went to Managua, and he gave the photographs to Marcos, and he took it to the archipelago.
What an incredible story. How beautiful that the prints got sent back and then they were distributed physically to people. I think that's really beautiful, and you know, maybe just a really fitting, I think, element of the story of your project, actually. Yeah.
Thank you.
That's wonderful. Are there any other questions that anyone would like to volley over to Jose or Maggie?
Just a quick little ad. I worked with the Amish population in Michigan, and I had to send them prints as well. And it's so fun I feel like it's such a fun thing to see these physical copies of our work, and to send them to people. I feel like it must be like Christmas to get these little packages of prints.
But also, I mean, I think for both of you, acknowledging the role that your subjects are playing in this. I mean, this is a dance that you're doing together, right? And you wouldn't have these projects without their participation and their trust in the conversation that they're having with you through images. So it feels like an important part of the process that you're partaking in. So it's wonderful. Well,
yeah, I was just going to say, to pick up on the part about the physical prints, I really want to encourage those of you that are in the area to go see the exhibition at Tilt, because seeing the images on screen versus being in the gallery and living with both bodies of work on the wall, and the scale of the pictures are so really perfect and beautiful. And the prints are really beautiful, and there's a connection between the two bodies of work that I think is more felt and seen about being in the physical space with the work, that I definitely saw, online, but being in person, there's this kind of beautiful cycle of pain and sorrow and love and beauty and growth that comes really across when you're in the work in person. So please come to Tilt and come visit the show.
Yeah, and I'm seeing, I think we're probably near our time, but I'm seeing a new question coming in that's about the process of the contrast in tone and the cinematic quality, I think probably of both of your images in a way. And I think that maybe connects to what Sarah was just reflecting on.
Yeah, I mean, I see the question too, and yeah, old black and white movies. Can blame my dad. We did a Humphrey Bogart movie marathon for months and he broke his leg. And then Orson Welles too. There's just something about, like, you can do so much with one light. It's really amazing. And I think that that's like, we got enough going on when we're out in the field photographing. And I think just dealing with one light and how much you can accomplish with that, like, it's a fun challenge. And just the beauty of it too, mixing with natural light. But yeah, definitely old movies are a big influence and are to this day, even with my color work too.
Well, I want to thank everyone for being here tonight. It was great to hear more about your process and your work and your reflections on their work as well, Alex. So thank you, all of you. Please come see the show, especially on March 10th, when both artists will be there. So thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed